So what it says on the back, which I feel like is not, even though the Beacon Hill Butcher had already been caught and murdered by the time her mama died. Her mama died? My kind of girl. Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse, and welcome to part 2 of what I read in the month of March. So if you missed part 1, I will link it for you guys down below. But like I said in that video, I had a really good reading month and thriller heavy. I did some middle grade, which is not my usual jam, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised by what I read. I have found some more middle grade that I plan to read over the next bit of time. And I also have completed all the books by one of my most favorite authors, and I'm in the process of reading the arc of the one that is coming out. There's such a sense of like satisfaction by having read an entire backlist by an author that you love, but also I feel like a little bit of sadness that now I've read everything, which just means I'm going to start the reread cycle. So that's not a bad thing either. But without any further ado, let's get into part 2 of what I read in March. The next book I have is 9 Lives by Peter Swanson. So I have talked about this book. I talked about it in, I think, like a recent book haul that I did, and I was reading it at the time. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, then you probably already know that I loved this book so very much. So you guys know I'm a huge fan of Peter Swanson, and I was so excited that he had a new book coming out, and I had heard nothing but great pre-buzz about this book. So as soon as I got it, I just dove right into it. And this is another homage to And Then There Were None, but with a really great twist to it. And in this book, we have 9 strangers. And I tried to do this in my other video and it was whited out. So these 9 strangers get a letter in the mail that basically looks like this. And it's just a typed list of all of their names. And they don't know what it means, and some people disregard it. And it says, if you're on the list, you're marked for death. So they don't know each other. They don't know what it means. But then one of the people on the list dies in a really bad way. And then another person on the list dies in a really bad way. And people start to figure out that something is happening here. So one of the people on the list is an FBI agent. So you know her antenna is straight up on this one. And what we find is we start to follow all of these people and what is going on and who is after them and why and what's the connection between them and who would want to do this. And I just absolutely loved it. And it was, like I said, it's an And Then There Were None with Peter Swanson's own unique twist on it. I just love his writing. I love his characters. He surprises me. He shocks me. He gets me every time. And I just loved it so much. So I have read a few of his books. I'm like looking. I need to read Every Value Break, which I got towards the end of last year. I have 8 Perfect Murders, which I'm waiting because I want to read all the books that are spoiled in 8 Perfect Murders before I read it. But The Kind Worth Killing is still my favorite of all of his books. But I would say this is a very close second, and it's kind of like right up there. Like it's as close to a 5-star read as it could possibly be, but I totally loved it. Like I said, he manages to surprise me every time, and his writing is so great. He's so engaging. We've got quick, short chapters. He is one of those people where I'm like, oh, just one more, just one more, just one more. And before you know it, like you've read 10, 12 chapters, but I thought it was just so brilliantly well done. The man knows how to write a book. He really knows how to write a book. So if you have not gotten into Peter Swanson yet, or you're looking for another one to dive into, may I highly, hugely, which I keep saying, recommend. I don't know why I said it in that weirdest voice in the entire world. Recommend 9 Lives. So the next book I have is one that I swore I was going to read before winter was out, and I did it under the wire. I did it. I read Misery by Stephen King. So this is the book that I did the vlog for, which I'm putting together / maybe by the time you're seeing this video, that video has gone up. So I will let you guys know if it's, like I said at the beginning, if it's available, I'll link it. If it's not, just know it's coming. And I did a full spoiler video of how I felt reading this. I wound up watching the movie. So for anyone who is not sure what Misery is about, or my journey with Stephen King and Misery, so I had not read any Stephen King until last year when I read Pet Sematary. And he was one of those authors that I enjoyed his nonfiction content, but I was definitely afraid of the horror side of things, and he didn't wholly appeal to me. And then he intimidated me, and I had seen a few of his movies like Pet Sematary and Children of the Corn. And I feel like that was all I had seen because it just scared me so much. I was just terrified of him. And then I just never went back to him. Not that I even tried, but I read Pet Sematary last year and I really loved it. And I loved sort of the broader stroke of what that book was about, which ultimately was about grief, sort of with all the horror in it and sort of like what a horror grief is and what it does to people. And when I was thinking about what to read next, a lot of people had recommended Misery. And part of why I picked this was because it's about a writer, and as an aspiring writer, or like I'm a writer aspiring to be published, I'm trying to fix my language around what I'm doing here. I was very interested in this because I love reading about writers. And like I said, I read his nonfiction book on writing, and I love his perspective about writing and have such a tremendous amount of respect for him as a writer. So I wanted to read this book. I can't get anywhere fast, right? And I managed to stay completely spoil free for this book, with the exception of things that were shown in the trailer of the movie with Kathy Bates and James Caan. And there's just like one specific pivotal scene in that trailer that I feel like everybody knows. Like, if you know, you know. If you don't know, I don't want to say it. But the book is so much worse in its violence and in its graphic depiction, and the movie does not come close to what happens in this book. And I'm not going to shade the movie, and I talk about it in my vlog. I feel like if you hadn't read the book, it could just be sort of an entertaining movie. Kathy Bates is tremendous in it. Richard Farnsworth is tremendous in it. But the book, it's not even apples and oranges. It's like apples and like hamburger meat. Like, they're two completely different things in my book. And that was the worst analogy. So the core of this book is we have a best-selling author named Paul Sheldon, and he winds up getting into a terrible car accident on a sort of twisted Colorado snowy road. And he winds up getting rescued by this woman, Annie Wilkes, and she takes him back to her house to nurse him back to health. And Annie is Paul's number one fan. And Paul has made a career by writing a series about a woman named Misery. And he is so over her and does not want to write about Misery anymore, doesn't want to have anything to do with Misery. And Annie is not happy about it. So what it says on the back, Annie has some methods up her sleeve. One is a needle, another is an axe, and then there's the blowtorch. So this is a claustrophobic, tense, at times gruesome, at times don't know what's going to happen next, kind of a wild-ish ride of a book. And what I will say is I had a hard time getting into the beginning of this book. So there is an element of a book within a book, because he is a best-selling writer, and we talk about his book series, and we go into the book series, and I often enjoy a book within a book. In this case, I felt totally taken out of the story, and it slowed me down to the point that it actually annoyed me, that I was like, why are you doing this? Like, I was invested, like, I just want to be with Paul and Annie, and then I got taken out of it. So I wound up getting the audiobook of this, and then I did a blend of reading and listening. The audiobook definitely helped me establish sort of tone and voice. The fact that the movie was already out, I 1000% was picturing Kathy Bates as Misery, which was really helpful. And not intentional, obviously, because the audiobook came out before the movie, but the author, or the audio reading sounded like Kathy Bates, but it wasn't Kathy Bates, if that makes any kind of sense. But the audiobook is really, really well done. So I wound up doing a mix of both. And then towards the end, I wound up listening as I was reading for like the climactic scenes, which I felt like really enhanced everything. And I very much enjoyed it. I don't know. I've never really done that before with a book, but I loved it in that part. And I would say, and you can tell from like my dog ear situation, I struggled with the first half of this book and getting into it, but the second half, and not like a complete delineation down the middle, but the more I got into it, the more I enjoyed it. I also think that things that were shocking in this, when it came out in, what was this, 86 or something? This came out quite a long time ago. 1987. I'm sure was more shocking then. I feel like I've read so much dark and messed up stuff in my life that things in here that I could understand why they were shocking then, I was sort of like, oh yeah, okay, There were definitely things that shocked me in this book, but there were parts of this that were not shocking to me because I think I've just read so much messed up stuff. But I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't love it. I feel like I'm kind of like a 3.5, 4-ish category. And again, I don't rate star books on this forum, but for those who are interested, and I will do it on Goodreads, which I'm super behind on. But I appreciate it for what it is. I understand why people love this book. I very much appreciate the commentary on the expectations placed on an author or a creator by their fans, where people want you to do a certain thing and be a certain way and get mad when you don't do what they want, or get mad when you change directions or kill off a character people love, or, you know, don't write all the same things. You know, everybody wants like the same kind of book, and if you dare deviate from it, like just how toxic a fan base can be. So I loved that because you hear it and you see it, and I'm equating it now to Scream 2022, where so many people were like up in arms about it and so many people loved it, and there's just like such a divisive feeling about the movie itself and decisions that were made in the movie. I loved it. Like, I was here for the ride. They definitely did stuff that I was like, really? But you're supposed to feel that way, I think. But just knowing just like how obsessive the fan bases can be and just the pressure they put on creators, I thought was really, really interesting. So it's definitely worth a read. I recommend it. I would just say, like, just know going in, and I mean, this is subjective. I had a hard time getting into it, but once I was in, I was good. But the audiobook is also great. So I'll talk more about it in the vlog. I probably talked enough about it here anyway, but there you go. That was Misery. And then the last book I finished this month is The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier. So this was her last backlist book that I had to read. This is the third book that she wrote. I am currently reading her new book, Things We Do in the Dark, that comes out this summer. I'm such an obsessive Jennifer Hillier fan, you guys know. So I read Freak and Creep. Creep and Freak is the order they came out in last month, and loved them. Those are her first two books. And this is completely independent of those books. It is set in the same universe. So there are a couple extremely passive references to a name from one of the earlier books that, like, you don't need to know it. It's very Taylor Jenkins Reid, kind of like a passing name in Daisy Jones type of a situation. And then the same college is referenced, that like where the characters in this book met are the same college that was used in the first two books, but you don't need to read them to understand any of it. My point being, let me get there quicker. My point being, she sets her books in the same universe, which I very much enjoy, and I feel like I'm having appreciation for it because I'm reading them all together right now. So The Butcher, I thoroughly loved the premise of this book, and I feel like she held back in this book in a way that she didn't in the first two, and that she didn't in the rest of her books. So I can't quite reconcile why. And like, this book started out like completely on that dark and messed up trajectory, and I was here for it, but then I feel like she took a turn, and I don't know if I almost feel like someone told her to dial it back, but I don't know how to explain it without, I'm obviously not going to spoil anything for you guys, but let me tell you the premise of this book. So The Butcher is the Beacon Hill Butcher, which was a serial killer that terrorized this town outside of Seattle, or towns outside of Seattle, for many, many years. And the Butcher was found and killed back in 1985. So we have present day, and we have Matt, who is the grandson of the police detective Edward Shank, who is the one who found and killed the Butcher back in 1985. He is a local hero. He is a local legend. And Matt's entire life, he has obviously grown up with this knowledge, and like with his grandfather being the biggest thing around. So now in present day, Edward is 80 years old. His wife has just passed away, and he is going to move out of his beautiful Victorian home that he has lived in to move into a retirement community, and he leaves his house to Matt. And Matt is sort of this up-and-coming restaurateur, and he's about to be on this reality TV show, and he's really made a huge name for himself, and he's super successful. and sort of he's on like the up and up and everything is great. And he's in this relationship and they've been together for 3 years and like everything is just sort of firing on all cylinders. So Matt winds up inheriting the house and moving in, but he doesn't want his girlfriend to move in. So he's got some commitment issues there. And his girlfriend Sam is obviously not super jazzed about that because again, they've been together for 3 years. But Matt moves into the house and he's doing some renovations and he winds up discovering this crate buried in the backyard. And when he opens it, he winds up finding some stuff that makes him question everything. And he doesn't know what to do. Does he go to the police? Does he keep it to himself? Does he tell Sam? Like, what does he do? And then in Sam's story, Sam is a true crime writer and she is obsessed with the Beacon Hill Butcher because she is convinced that her mother was a victim of the Beacon Hill Butcher, even though the Beacon Hill Butcher had been caught and murdered 2 years before her mother died. And Sam was just a baby when her mother was killed, but she thinks there's a connection there and she's investigating it. So we've got like these two great storylines happening. We get a lot of what happens in the past with the Butcher. We get the relationships between family and just sort of the twistedness of it all. And like I said, it started out really, really strong. And I enjoyed like being in the know on some things and being in the dark on other things. But where I struggled with this book, and again, there was just so much fantastic, dark and messed up stuff at the beginning of this book and like well into it. But I didn't really understand the relationship between Sam and Matt at all. Like they just didn't seem to like each other. So I didn't understand how they had been in a 3-year relationship. And like some stuff happens that I don't wholly understand choices that Sam makes at certain points. And I feel like the characters in the first 2 books that Jennifer Hillier wrote were so well fleshed out, were so well written, were so well connected, and that she never lost sort of the tension that she was building. She never lost sort of the dark and messed up turns it could possibly take. I didn't feel a lot of tension in this book. And again, I don't mind being in the know about certain things, but it just seemed like she didn't go all in. And I am used to Jennifer Hillier going all in on her books. And I feel like every other one of her books, she goes all in, but I just didn't feel like the relationship, and I feel like it was the Sam and Matt relationship really didn't work for me. So that kind of took me out of the story. And there's some other characters as well who I enjoyed, but I just didn't feel like that, like Matt and his friends and Sam were really well fleshed out. Like that group of people, I didn't really buy into. So Sam I liked on her own. Matt I liked on his own. His grandfather I liked on his own. And I liked sort of the dynamic of family that took place, but I just had a hard time with Sam and Matt together. So it was a little bit of a bummer in that sense. But at the same time, like I enjoyed it. I enjoy seeing where authors go in their journey when they're writing books. I can see a lot of sort of go-tos. And even now that I'm reading Things We Do in the Dark, like I see things in that book that, this is her newest book, that maybe started here or that were inspired here, or they're little, not even Easter eggs, but just sort of you can see an author's style or you can see a choice or things that they gravitate towards in their storytelling or in their themes. So I enjoy that part of it. So I liked it. I would say if you're a Jennifer Hillier fan and have read everything else she's written, I would read it, but I would not start here, would be my advice. So great premise, great start to things, but I just feel like we never really got to know the characters as much as I wanted to, and that there was just too much off with their relationship that I had a hard time buying into their relationship. If that helps. Probably not. Always hard to talk about a book without ruining a book, but I'm glad I read it. I'm happy I have it. I enjoyed it. There's a lot of really great stuff in here, and I'm just a forever fan. I'm just a forever fan of hers. So that's going to do it for everything that I read. I am still kind of slowly listening to a couple nonfiction books. I was taking my time. I don't want to rush through stuff, and I did not get to Rachel's Holiday by Marian Keyes like I wanted to. I read the first chapter in it, but then Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand and I started to buddy read this together. So this is my focus right now. But I do have the audiobook of Rachel's Holiday as well, because again, Rachel comes out April 5th. So it's already out by the time you guys are seeing this. So I am going to read Rachel's Holiday first and then dive into the sequel. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And again, I read the first chapter of Rachel's Holiday before Sarah and I got into Jennifer Hillier, and it was like a warm hug of like, yes, this is what I remember her books were like. This is why I love Marian Keyes. Like, I'm already in. So more to come next month, but let me know what you guys are reading. Let me know what your favorite books of the month were. If you had any bummers, anything else you want to let me know, of course, let me know down below. But until then, I will talk to you guys in another video. So until then, that made no sense. Until then, take care. Hope everybody is doing great. I am off my marbles as usual today, and I will see you guys in another video. Take care, everybody. Bye.